What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we're taking a look at my current rest of season rankings, talking about the players who have fallen the most over the last 2 weeks. As always, if you want to see my exact rest of season rankings for every player, along with my weekly rankings, projections, and my sports betting picks, which are currently just shattering the industry right now, then you can take a look at that all at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. So, we'll get into the biggest followers in a second, but first, of course, have to start things off as usual. The stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was which running back in 2021, through weeks 1 through 4, so it wasn't counting on Sunday, had spent the most time on average behind the line of scrimmage on at least 40 attempts. The answer is Kareem Hunt. Brian French was the first to get it right on YouTube, and no one, as of recording this, has gotten that right on Twitter. Today's stat. Through Sunday, so we're not counting the Monday night games. You guys know I record these on Monday before the game. Through Sunday, only one quarterback has thrown for one or fewer, so 0-1 interceptions on over 150 pass attempts. Who is it? All right, so again, we're going to start off with tight ends and quarterbacks since not much usually moves there, and then we'll go over all the running backs and wide receivers after that. We actually do see a few movers at the tight end position for these last 2 weeks. But two of them are for injuries, so not a whole lot to take away there. First up, we have George Kittle. He's down 4 spots to the tight end 8. He was placed on the short-term IR, so not like the season-ending IR, just for the first few weeks, or for the next few weeks. And this one, I'm not overly concerned about because they've come out and said, yeah, he's hurt, but we're just being overly cautious. They want him healthy for the long term, and so they're not going to pull a move like the Vikings did, 2 weeks ago. Thank goodness the Vikings held out Dalvin Cook this last week. You don't throw your players out there when there's such a massive importance to your team if they're at significant risk of re-injury. And that's what they were going to do with George Kittle. If they were going to play him now through the injury, well, he might get even more hurt. He might miss even more time and still not be overly effective. And so you put him on the IR. They're hoping after these 3 weeks, he's going to be good to go. And once these 3 weeks are over, when he comes back and plays, he's still going to be a top 5 tight end. So don't worry about seeing him at tight end 8 right now. It's just because he's going to miss some games. And obviously, that decreases his value. Logan Thomas has also moved down because of injury. He has the hamstring injury. This one has a little bit more variance to it because hamstring injuries, they're not easy to know, and the team hasn't been as openly optimistic. Obviously, sometimes we get duped by the 49ers when they're overly optimistic, and then just we don't see that play out. But there hasn't been that same level of hey, Logan Thompson is going to be totally fine after 3 weeks. Maybe it takes him a little longer. But regardless, I moved him down 5 spots to tight end 16 because he's also not George Kittle. When Logan Thomas returns, he's not all of a sudden a top 5 tight end, right? He's still Logan Thomas. Right now, so with Kittle, we're not really looking at any streaming options. You could play Dwelly, but there's really no one replacing Kittle. It's going to go off. RSJ is fine as a replacement to Logan Thomas if you're in a competitive league and you're oh no, I lost Logan Thomas. You can play RSJ. It's just fine. It's more of a play in 14, 16 team leagues. With both of these two, they're going to be fine when they come back, and we're not really looking to backups all that much. Two that have moved down, though, not due to injury, just in terms of their circumstance is clearly not as good as we had hoped it would be, are Robert Tonyan and Cole Kmet. Tunyan's down 5 spots to tight end 15. Kmet's down 7 spots to tight end 24. The issue with these two is just the volume, right? Tonyan has 17 targets through 5 games, and Kmet has 19 targets through 5 games, and neither one of them has more than 1 game with 3+ receptions. That sort of volume is simply not going to cut it, and there's also little reason to think it's going to expand, right? If we thought that these guys would break out down the stretch, that their role would improve throughout the season, then we can get on board with them. But Adams has a 90% target share. It's not that high, but it's literally close to 50%. He's just dominating the targets for Green Bay. And then the Bears, they're trying to run the ball as much as physically possible. And so with both these guys, I don't see the volume increasing in the short term, so they pretty much have to drop in the rankings. At quarterback, we have 2 big fallers, or I guess 2 fallers. One of them's not big. It's just a big name that I wanted to mention, I guess. It could be 3. Depends on Daniel Jones. As of recording this, I don't know how long he's going to miss. And honestly, with concussions, we don't really know. We just kind of have to wait for them to progress, wait for them to pass concussion protocol, and sometimes we just don't know how long that's going to be. But I'm hoping this week we kind of get some sort of indication. I don't want to drop him though because maybe he plays this week. I don't know. It looked like a pretty bad concussion, at least from the outside. But we're just going to have to wait and see on this one. I just figured I'd mention him because, if he misses a few weeks with this, obviously it's going to decrease his value. But since I don't know, I'm not going to drop him just yet. But 2 names that did drop are, of course, Russell Wilson. He dropped a ton. He's down, I believe, to the quarterback 23. He's going to have surgery on the finger, or he had surgery on the finger. A little bit more complicated than they were hoping for, but he's going to miss about 6 to 8 weeks. Said that or at least it's been reported that he wants to return by week 10, which would be on the early end of that. But this is also Russell Wilson. This is a guy who has played through injuries in the past. He has gone through significant rehabilitation. I remember a few years ago when he had that knee injury, he was in rehab 24/7. I mean, he was being waken up in the middle of the night to do rehab every few hours. And so this is a guy that we expect isn't just going to blow off his recovery and be on the tail end of this number. He wants to be out there playing, and I think that he's going to probably hit the beginning of this 6 to 8 week time frame. Obviously he has to he's not Superman, right? He has to recover from it. But this is a similar situation to me as Michael Thomas. I talk about every single week when we talk about risers. I guess every other week when we talk about risers. And then Michael Thomas is just going to gain value. Every single week he gains value because he's getting closer and closer to returning. It's going to be the same thing with Russell Wilson. I'm going to move him up 2 spots every single week. Next week he might be 20 to 21. He might be in that 17, 18 range kind of after that. And he'll slowly work his way back to a low end one when he's back. But again, yeah, it's probably going to be around week 10, week 11 before he returns. The one person who fell at least more than a spot was Dak Prescott, and not due to injury. This one's just because, Dallas is 28th in pass play percentage. And so Dak is still playing well. Obviously, the offense is dominating. And while I think there's a chance that when Michael Gallup returns, they don't flip the switch and all of a sudden they're top 5 in pass attempts, but come a little bit closer to league average, or when they're, not winning by a ton every single game, they come closer to league average. But their run game is crushing it right now. Their defense is playing really, really well. There's no reason for them to change, right? If they were losing a bunch and their ground game stunk, you'd be okay, well, maybe they're going to throw the ball more. But the opposite is happening. And so why would they change? They're a field goal away from being 5-0. Why would they make a change? So when situations like this happen, I just feel it was kind of easy to just drop him down 2 spots. Maybe I'd drop him down a 3rd spot. But yeah, he's less valuable than we'd hoped he'd be in this summer because they're running the ball at such a significant percentage, and there's no reason for us to think that's going to change in the future. So on to what everyone really wants to be here for, and that's running backs and wide receivers. We'll start off with running backs, and we'll go over Joe Mixon to start. He's down 5 spots to the running back 11. This one had nothing to do with the injury. He obviously saw his snap share way down this last week, but the ankle injury doesn't seem to be major, and so I just think he's going to slowly recover from that. Again, this drop is not due to that. Maybe one of the spots is, but this is more just we see him go out there in week 1. He gets 29 carries, 4 targets, or 4 receptions too. He caught all the targets. And then we see 6 total targets in weeks 2 through 5. And he gets fewer carries in every single game. And in 2 of those games, they won. So his carries are dropping. His targets are bottoming out at 1 to 2 a game. If Pirine and Evans are going to continue mixing in, then I just can't rank him as a mid-range running back 1. I still think he's very valuable. Of course, having a running back on such a good offense with high touchdown upside still has upside every single week. He could easily go out there and have 150 and multiple scores. Not many running backs are capable of doing that. So not saying that he's not valuable, but he's more of a low-end running back 1 than the mid-range running back 1 that I thought he was before. Saquon down 5 spots, running back 14. This one should be obvious. Of course, he was carted off with the ankle injury. I have not seen the MRI results yet, but the initial reports are like 2 to 4 weeks saying it's not a high ankle sprain. That's great news. Let's be honest. Any report that says 2 to 4 weeks for Saquon means 1 to 3 weeks. Like, he's just going to beat timelines. So this is not an injury where it's like, oh no, we're going to be without him for a few months. Unless the MRI, shows something that we're not anticipating it showing. I would say that if they come in, the MRI results come in and they're positive, right? He's only going to miss a few games at the most. I'll probably have him in that like running back 9 to 11 range, so low end 1. If the reports come out and it's like, no, it's 2 to 4 weeks, leaning towards the 4 weeks, then I'll have him in that like 13 to 14 range. You don't want to drop him too much, because if we're thinking about, the goal of our teams, right? Well, we're not just trying to crush it right now, we're trying to crush it later in the season. So anyone that's saying, oh no, I'm 2-3 right now, should I be dumping Saquon because I need to win now? You don't technically need to win now. I mean, obviously, yeah, you need to like not be losing every week, but all you need to do is get into the playoffs. And if you're selling someone who got hurt, who's a huge edge to your roster when he's healthy, and is going to miss maybe a month, and again, for this, I'm assuming it's like that 2 to 4 week time frame. But this is good advice for just like any player that is, high upside player, wide receiver 1, running back 1, is going to miss this amount of time. Think about your roster when they return. Even if you can like gain a win in a trade right now, if you're going to make the playoffs, but now you don't have Saquon Barkley on your team, who are you getting in return? Are you getting like a significant disadvantage? And now someone in your league just acquired Saquon at a discount, maybe takes a hit right now, but was already ahead in the standings. And so they're in the playoffs. They don't care about losing a game right now. What they care about is when they're in the playoffs, now they have, McCaffrey and Saquon. Like, you just can't allow other teams to do that in your league, because maybe you can get the playoffs, but you're not going to win in the playoffs. So that's my kind of take on any sort of situation where a star player goes down. It's not like a 2-month injury, and we need to know what to do. I personally don't like trading those players because we're giving edges to other people and taking them away from us, and that's just not a sharp thing to do. Chris Carson, actually, this is a good situation to talk about right after that. It's like the opposite scenario. He's down 8 spots to the running back 24. This one, I'm less optimistic about. And also, Chris Carson is not, McCaffrey. He's not Saquon Barkley. Like, when he's on the field, he's not giving you that incredible edge, like a 7-point projection difference at your running back spot. That he doesn't provide that. The reports on him are a little bit more murky. You want to trust what teams are saying. When Seattle speaks and they tell us, what the injury is, what the timeline is, that's something I trust. I don't trust when we have like fantasy doctors out there giving their opinion, being like, hey, I think it could be this, it could be that, it could be this timeline. I don't love trusting those, because these are people who, they don't have all the information. And obviously they're educated in like, the doctor's sense. Like, obviously they're educated in knowing what they're talking about with these injuries, but they haven't seen Carson. They haven't done an evaluation. And we don't know all the specifics along a number of different injuries across the league. And so giving takes on them can be a little bit dangerous at times. We've saw it with Gibson, right? This last week, we have a ton of doctors in the fantasy space coming out and being like, yeah, this is going to be like a season-long injury. It's something that's going to plague him all year. And he goes out there and he sets a career high in snap count. Sometimes we can have a little bit of fear that comes in when people talk about these things and these headlines come out, and then people are like, oh, should I be trading him for like a running back 4? No, you need to not trust everyone you hear who's just giving a random take about an injury that they don't know all the information about. So when we bring that to Carson, though, this one, it's a weird one, right? It's not a twisted ankle. It's not an MCL sprain or hyperextension of the knee. It's some weird neck injury that the team's being a little bit shy to tell us anything about. So when these situations happen, and the player as itself, like before we even heard about this injury, we were talking about Carson as a sell. We were saying, hey, his snaps are going down, his targets are going down, and they weren't featuring one running back anyways. This is a guy I don't want on my team. Then it comes out he's got some weird long-term neck injury. Well, now I'm okay trading him away because I don't think even when healthy, he's giving us that edge. So I hope all of that made sense. Maybe go back and listen to it if it didn't, but I hope that it did. On to Miles Sanders. This, again, is a non-injury drop. He's down 8 spots, running back 25. Mentioned last week how I was concerned about his usage, and definitely a positive after this last game. Goes out, plays 75% of the snaps, sets a season high with 5 receptions. Unfortunately, he's only able to turn that into 6 yards. Usually 5 receptions is not turned into 6 yards. Gainwell still looks good. It still just seems like Miles Sanders is unlikely to have very many weeks where he's surpassing 18 touches, 20 touches. And if we're not getting that, if he's going to stay in that like 10 to 12 carries, 3 to 4 targets, it's like he's valuable, as a low-end running back too. But there's only so much you can do with, 11 carries and 4 targets, right? There's only so much you can do as Miles Sanders. I still think he's a very talented running back. If Gainwell were to ever go down, miss some time, I think Sanders has a lot of upside. But until that happens, I like him more here in this like low-end running back 2 range. I've also moved David Montgomery down 15 spots to running back 28. Of course, he's going to miss a few weeks after going on the IR. Reports seem to be that like he needed to go on IR. Maybe he doesn't return the next week after, but it kind of seems like that 3 to 5 week range, depending on how he recovers. This one is a little bit scary because we know Damian Williams is talented, but Herbert also played well in his absence. And if that continues over these next few weeks, then, Montgomery's not going to just step into a full-time workload when he returns, right? If Williams and Herbert are playing well, they're not just going to be complete zeros when Montgomery comes back. That would make absolutely no sense for the team to do. So since there's a chance that happens, this is not going to be a situation like Russell Wilson, like Michael Thomas, where I'm slowly moving him up. Maybe he goes a little bit higher every week, but it's not going to be when he returns, he's right back to where he was, because we've kind of seen that possibility shake out to where he's just not going to be as valuable as he was before the injury, at least in my opinion. Damien Harris down 7 spots, running back 26. You guys know I've been off of Harris for a while now, basically since the start of the season. I continue to believe he is a massive sell, especially after the James White injury. If people think that that's going to help his targets, it's not. He lost a fumble in week 1 that cost him the game. He fumbled again at the goal line this week. He's averaging well under 4 yards per carry. He's a 0 in the receiving game. He's just a touchdown or bust running back that does have competition behind him. Like, I honestly don't know when Stevenson is going to get the chance, if he ever will this season. It's entirely possible he only gets a chance next season. But they activated on Sunday. Harris has this chest injury. I don't know a ton of specifics about the injury. It doesn't seem major, but maybe this is enough to where he fumbled again. It is definitely hurting the team, his fumbles. The injury, like maybe this is a chance where they're now finally activating Stevenson. And let's be honest, like his floor, Harris, even if you don't like Stevenson, his floor is so low. Like when he's not playing the Texans or the Jets, when he's playing like a real NFL franchise, he has no ceiling. He needs 3 touchdowns to hit an actual ceiling where you're like, oh no, like I didn't play Harris, right? Even in his 2 touchdown games, he's scoring like 16 fantasy points. So no ceiling, no floor. Don't want him on my roster. If you've got him, I think you have to be selling him, especially after this game with a touchdown. Next up, Mike Davis, another running back I've kind of talked about. I don't like his role in the future. Down 9 spots to running back 27. He's maintaining his snap share. He's maintaining his like 15 touches a week. But anyone watching these games knows Cordero Patterson is like a million times better than Mike Davis. I really think Gallman at some point in the near future is going to get some sort of workload that might only be like 3, 4, 5 touches a game. But those are touches that are coming away from Mike Davis. They're not touches that are coming away from Cordero Patterson. And so I don't see him as being like a super valuable running back 2 moving forward. And so I felt like dropping him into this like flex range and that like running back 25 to 28. I think that's a good range for Mike Davis. Final faller at running back is Kenyan Drake, down 11 spots to the running back 47. I mean, this one's pretty simple, right? Like, even when Josh Jacobs was out, Drake was never given a starter's workload. And then when Jacobs returns, he gets 3 carries and 1 target combined over 2 weeks. That's just not going to get it done, right? So he's a handcuff, but he literally needs Jacobs and Barber to miss time. So I think that at this point, Kenyan Drake can be dropped in like 10-team leagues, 12-team leagues, and he's not even a great option in a 14-team league. On wide receivers, I've got 5 followers for you. We'll start off with Calvin Ridley, down 3 spots to the wide receiver 12. Obviously, he misses this last game due to personal reasons. This is not related to that. That's not why I'm dropping in the rankings. It's really just this offense, it's just so much worse than I had ever envisioned it being. They finally came to life, against the Jets, but it's the Jets, right? Like if you can't move the ball against the Jets, we have much larger problems here, right? He's maintained, talking about Ridley here, obviously, a very high share of the targets, of the air yards when he's playing. So this isn't saying that he's like trash now. He's not going to be valuable in fantasy. Of course he's going to be valuable in fantasy, just not as valuable as I thought he would be, and pretty much everyone thought he would be. I don't think there was a site out there that wasn't ranking him in the top 5. I think he was a very, very popular player that it's like, yeah, he's going to dominate the air yards, dominate the targets. I just don't think anyone saw Matt Ryan falling so far back in efficiency, so far back in talent this season. We thought there'd be a drop, but he's clearly not even close to what he once was. And because that's the case, I can't rank him as a top 10 wide receiver. Again, still the wide receiver 12. He's still a very valuable wide receiver. And also, I'm not saying you got to be trading him away, right? Because I never want to trade low on studs. You'd for sure be selling low if you were trading him away right now. If you don't trust this offense anymore, that's totally fine. I don't trust this offense that much, but you have to wait for a blow-up game. You have to wait for a game that Calvin Ridley goes out there and he has 13 targets, 10 for 132 scores. Then you can field trade offers for Ridley. But if you're trading him right now, it's like there's no point. You're not flipping him for someone incredible, so why? There's just no reason to sell low. I've also dropped Keenan Allen down 6 spots to the wide receiver 16. It's just a fact at this point that Mike Williams is the most valuable wide receiver on the Chargers. Keenan Allen is 3rd in the NFL among wide receivers in targets with a little over 10 per game. That's incredible volume, right? And this is a really, really good offense. And he's only 23rd in fantasy points since Williams is the one being used downfield, and then Williams and Eckler are used so much more in the red zone, and they even like using their tight ends a ton in the red zone as well. So while Allen has an extremely high floor, and this is a fantastic offense, the weekly ceiling is just so much lower than we're used to it being when, Mike Williams didn't have such a large role in the offense and such an important role in the offense. I do think that Keenan Allen is going to be more lucky moving forward. If you told me he's right now, again, 3rd in targets, 23rd in fantasy points. If you told me he ended the season 3rd in targets, I would be shocked if he was 23rd in fantasy points. He would definitely end up being higher than this. So he's getting still a little bit unlucky right now, but I still don't think that makes him, a top 10 wide receiver. I think you have to rank him at this point as a mid-range wide receiver too, because of the things I talked about. The touchdown upside is a lot lower than it used to be, and it wasn't even ever that high. And these spiked weeks that we used to see him have, well, a lot of those came when he had some targets deep downfield, or when he had, 15 targets in a game. He's having consistent targets, but with Mike Williams there, Mike Williams takes away some of these really high value targets, and so we're left with games like 2 weeks ago, like even this last week, where the targets spike, but it's really not a fantastic week in fantasy. So I had to bring him down to more of a mid to high end wide receiver 2. Allen Robinson down 11 spots to the wide receiver 29. Even after losing Montgomery for a month, the Bears are just sticking with such a high volume rushing attack. They rank 30th now in pass play rate. They're just trying to win games by saying, hey, we're decent at running the football. At this point, it's pretty clear they're good. They're a good run team. They're going to try and limit turnovers. Let's not throw picks. Let's not fumble the ball. And let's just win it with our defense. Let's say our defense is strong enough to where we can limit teams to that 17 to 23 range. And we think with the run game, we can barely beat that. And so they're probably going to just try and win a lot of really close, low-scoring games. That is gross for fantasy. Obviously, we don't want that happening. And it's a very bad thing for any non-running back. And then you also add in like this Darnell Mooney breakout that like, I mean, who's the number one? I think Mooney at this point, it's the 1A. It's Allen Robinson's 1B. Now, I have Robinson in 1 out of 3 leagues, and I am not trading him away. I haven't received offers because no one's trading for him, and that should tell you something, right? Like, if you're not receiving offers for someone, what do you think people are going to give up, right? Like, I get people asking me, it's like, oh, should I be trading Allen Robinson right now? Why would you do that? Like, what do you think that someone is going to send you in return that's going to make it worth it, right? We still know Allen Robinson's one of the most talented wide receivers in the league, and this is a very condensed passing attack. So know that if you want to trade him, that's totally fine. But it's kind of like with Calvin Ridley. You don't trade someone who's very talented for nothing when they're performing poorly. You wait for them to perform well and then try and dump them for high. But think about this team. Number one, they're not an elite team, okay? So they can't just run the ball forever, right? They're not going to play the Lions and the Raiders every single week. Those are not very good teams. They're going to be down at some point, and they're going to have to throw it. And when they're forced to throw it, it's such a consolidated target share that Robinson and Mooney make up such a large percentage of those targets that when they have weeks where they have to throw it, those two are going to explode, or at least one of them is going to explode. That can be your time to sell. And you look at their upcoming schedule: Packers, Bucks, 49ers. They're going to be trailing for at least 2 of those games, probably all of those games. And so if you really just cannot stand Allen Robinson anymore, wait for them to get down against the Packers. Maybe he blows up there. Wait for them to get destroyed by the Bucks. Let's be honest, they're going to have to throw the ball much, much more than the 30th most times in the league on a per-play basis. They're going to have to throw it in that game. That is probably the time where you can sell Allen Robinson. Sterling Shepard, also down 10 spots, wide receiver 48. Of course, this is because he has the hamstring injuries and the emergence of Kadarius Toney, who I actually haven't seen if he is going to be suspended. I don't think right now it looks like he's going to be, but keep an eye on that through the punch in the game. We'll see if he gets suspended. But he's been incredible these last few weeks, and I don't know why they weren't using him to start the season. I mean, he's just a guy that we talked about in the summer. It was like we really want him to go to a creative offense, right? We want him to go to a team that's going to scheme him the ball, because all you have to do is give him the ball, and he'll do a ton after the catch. He's super athletic, super electric with the ball in his hands. He's not going to go out there and just like dominate a route tree, right? He's not an alpha wide receiver that's going out there and just shredding defenses with like intricate routes, right? That's not Kadarius Toney. But if you just get him the ball, he's going to make the entire defense miss and score a touchdown. Okay, that's what Kadarius Toney is. And it was frustrating being like, oh no, are the Giants going to do that, right? Are the Giants going to be smart enough to just get him the ball? And it seems like these last 2 weeks, they've been forced to do that, right? Because they're down Shepard. Ingram's a bust, and then they're down Slayton. And now we have Barkley getting hurt. It was like, okay, we have no more playmakers. Sure, fine. Let's just chuck the ball to Toney and see what he can do. And then they saw what he can do. And I think now they're realizing, oh, if we just scheme this kid the rock, he's going to do really, really well. And so definitely a player that you're going to be wanting. And it hurts Shepard because when he returns, Shepard had such a large percentage of the volume. That's why he was doing well. Well, that's not going to happen anymore, right? When he's back, they're going to be still getting the ball to Toney, and that's going to hurt Shepard. So I had to drop him. And then finally, Juju, obviously down infinity spots to nothing. He's not in the rest of the season rankings anymore. He's going to miss the rest of the season with the shoulder injury. I wanted to mention him, though, just because no one who watches this channel owns Juju, right? But I know a lot of you have Najee Harris. He was a huge target. Deontay Johnson was a huge target. Claypool a huge target for us. These guys are going to get peppered with targets. Like, I want to see what happens in like a few weeks without Juju, but I'm not trading these guys because maybe like Big Ben obviously holds the offense back a ton, and it's tough for them to like truly explode with Big Ben at quarterback. But I mean, let's be honest. These three are getting a significant number of the targets, a significant number of the yards, and so their floor and ceiling are insane. Like these guys are gonna, like Deontay Johnson could be seeing 12 targets a game. Claypool could be seeing 10 targets a game with a lot of that coming deep downfield. A lot of upside in the Steelers' offense, which is crazy to say because they stink, right? The offense is awful, but there's only 3 dudes getting the football, and so they're going to be good in fantasy. So those are the biggest fallers over the last 2 weeks. Remember that you can see my complete list of rest season rankings, all the risers, all the fallers, where exactly everyone is. It's constantly updated too, so if you want to be looking at trades, you want to be upgrading wide receiver, well, let's try and upgrade from the wide receiver 40 to wide receiver 30. Like, try and do upgrades using the rankings. Again, on our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting the like button, and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.